Okay, in this video, we're looking at Chapter 10, Section 2, and we're talking about graphing quadratic functions. So you always have that same setting at the top, okay? And you write graphing a quadratic functions, underlined in red, of course, Chapter 10, Section 2, and then Part 1. Because again, we're just going to have some more problems just to keep practicing. But first, we need to figure out what is a quadratic function. What is it? Okay, so yes, you're writing this down. Yes, you're writing this down. A quadratic function is a function in which the greatest power of the variable is 2. Remember we talked about how some equations had variables like y equals x squared, plus 1, for example. What they mean here is that the greatest, for a quadratic function, the greatest power of the variable being x, is 2. Okay? So when we talk about quadratic functions, we're talking about something x squared plus 1, or x squared plus 2, or 3x squared plus 1. Always, the x is always going to have a squared with it, always. So there are certain properties, or some certain descriptive attributes that go with a quadratic function. So this quadratic function is a graph that is in a U-shaped, meaning it looks like a U and either opens upward, like a capital U, or downward, like a lowercase n. So it's going to either open upward or open downward, and I'm going to show you just below here what that looks like. And then the graph, if the graph opens upward, then the coefficient of the squared, meaning that x, is positive. So that means it's going to be positive x squared. It's positive. Or just not written, it's just, you don't have to write the positive, as you know. If the graph opens downward, okay, the graph written downward, then that's the variable, the coefficient of the variable is negative. Negative. So it would be negative x squared. That means this graph is facing downward. I'm going to show you what that looks like. Okay, this is y equals x squared. And notice, this is a positive x squared. So, as you can see, it's a U, and the opening is upward. It's positive. Okay, that's just one of the characteristics of a quadratic function. If you look at x squared that is negative, here's a negative x squared. This is negative. Okay, and you can see the opening looks like a sort of like a lowercase n, but it's facing downward. So you have positive here. Again, another example of positive x squared. It's facing up. Positive is facing up. Negative is facing down. Okay, these are just some characteristics or descriptions of a quadratic function. That's just what it looks like. Okay, so now we're going to practice drawing. So we have to graph each function. So here, again, we have quadratic functions. Quadratic meaning there's a 2. There, x is to the second power. Okay, so what I need from you is to really give you an example of what a quadratic function looks like. You always want to have a positive and a negative number represented in your table here. So we're going to have negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2. Because this will help us see that U, either uppercase U or lowercase u. And what I see here is that this is a positive x. So I'm expecting an uppercase U, or facing upward, making it positive quadratic function. Let's see if that works out. So we have y equals negative 2 squared, remember, negative 2 squared plus 1. So remember, it's negative 2 times negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 2, which gives you positive 4. Then we add 1, and we get positive 5. Let's try the next one. Y equals negative 1 squared plus 1. So it's a negative 1 times a negative 1, which gives us positive 1, plus 1, which gives us a 2. Okay, and then obviously y equals 0 squared is 0. So 0 plus 1 gives us 1. And then y equals, we have 1 squared plus 1. So 1 times 1 is 1, plus 1 is 2. And then we have y squared y equals 2 squared plus 1. So 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. Okay, so now we're going to graph it. And we're going to start with the first set of coordinates there, negative 2 comma 5. So negative 2, we go over 2, 1, 2, and up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here we go. All right, and we go over 1, negative, negative 1, and up 2, 1, 2. There we are. And then we're at 0, 1, 0, 1. Okay, and then we're at positive 1, up 2, 1, 2. Okay, and then we're at positive 2, up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So as you can see, here is our U, and yep, it's a positive, it looks like a U. It looks, and because it was a positive X, then you have it facing upward, and it looks like it's a positive quadratic formula, okay? Because it's a U instead of an N. Okay, all you do is graph it. That's it, and you're done. You got to give me, in this case, you have to give me 5 points because that really shows us the U. You need 5 points. 2 of them have to be negative. Usually you use 0 as your middle, and then 2 should be negative. Positive. 2 negative, 2 positive. Okay? Let's try the next set. And again, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2. You're going to want to print screen these so that way you have good examples to work from when doing your workbook. Okay, here's where you got to pay attention. Watch closely. I have a negative here. That negative means it should be going down. It should look like an N. Okay, so pay attention. So we have a negative, what? Negative 2 squared plus 4. This is where you have to watch. And if you're muting me and you're not paying attention, and you mute the video, you're going to miss this tip, and I'm going to know it just by how you do the problem. You're going to do it wrong. So first, let's do the exponent. It's negative 2 times negative 2. That gives us positive 4. But remember, this whole thing is being multiplied by that negative with the x. So it ends up being negative 4. And then you would add 4, and you get 0. And that's why you're going to see a 0 in the y. And again, if you mute this, you're going to struggle, and it's your own fault. Okay, so pay attention. All right, let's try the next one. Y equals a negative times negative 1 squared plus 4. And this is why you want to write this separately in your copybook so you can really write this out. It's negative 1 times negative 1. Oops. Okay, negative 1 times negative 1. Okay, that equals a positive 2. But again, you have this negative from the original equation. That goes right here, making it negative 2 plus 4. Negative 2 plus 4 gives us positive 2. Positive 2. Okay? And obviously, this is the easy part. We have y equals negative 0 squared plus 4. Well, 0 squared is 0. You can't have negative 0, so it's just 4. Okay? And then we have y equals negative 1 squared plus 4. So remember, it's 1 times 1 gives you 1, but it's now negative 1 plus 4, and that gives us 3. Okay? All right. And now we have the last one, y equals negative 2 squared plus 4. So you have negative 2 times 2 gives you positive 4, and then negative. So it's negative 4 plus 4 gives you the 0. Okay, now we're going to graph them. And again, start from the top and work our way down. So it's negative 2 in the x direction, so 1, 2. And then because that's 0 in the y direction, you just leave it there. So that's a negative 2, 0 right here. And then we have negative 2, negative 1, up to 1, 2. Okay, and then we're at 0, positive 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're at 1, comma, that's where I did something wrong. because it should match on the other side. Oh, I know what I did wrong. And you're probably yelling in the computer. Okay, this is good. What's negative 1 times negative 1? Is a positive 1, not positive 2. Can't believe I said positive 2. It's okay. All right, I had a moment. All right, so it's positive 1, and then you bring the negative over, and you get negative 1 plus 4 is the positive 3. There we go. So we have to fix that point right there. And I noticed something's wrong because it should match on the other side. So it's a negative 1, comma 3, and then it's a positive 1, comma 3. So you have negative 1, comma 3, and then positive 1, comma 3. So hopefully I didn't just confuse all of you. And then you have a positive 2, 0. That would be positive 1. There we go. Let's try this again. Positive 2, 0. So you can see that, and I put the arrows there to show you that it would actually continue if we did more points. Okay, and you can see that it does indeed create an n, or an upside down u, because it was a negative equation to begin with. And this is why we're going to do a couple, many examples, because you just need to practice graphing, just to get used to it. Remember how you felt when you first did your other graphs. Okay, so here's the next step. First thing we're going to point out is this is a positive equation, positive x there. Okay, positive 3, so it's going to look like a u. And again, I'm going to do negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, to be consistent. Okay, so y equals 3 times negative 2 squared. And you get negative 2 times negative 2, and you'll multiply by 3 when you're done. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4 times that 3 gives you 12. Okay, so y equals 3 times negative 1 squared. So you have, again, negative 1 times negative 1. Oops. So negative 1 times negative 1. Again, you multiply by 3 when you're done. So negative 1 times negative 1 is 1. And then you multiply by 3, and you get 3. All right. Then we have, oops, I didn't write it. There we go. And then 0. So y equals 3 times 0 squared, which is 0. Anything times 0 is just 0. The easiest one you have to do. And then 3 times 1 squared. So remember, it's 1 times 1. Then you'll multiply by 3. So it's 1 and 3, which gives you 3. And then 3 times, oh, I didn't write it here first. Y equals 3 times 2 squared. So then you have 2 times 2, which gives us 4, but then you multiply by 3, and you get 12. See the pattern? 12, 3, 0, 3, 12. What's different is the x in each of those points. So, all right, we believe it's supposed to be it's positive, so it should look like a u. Let's see if we did it right. So I have a negative 2, 1, 2, and I go up 12. Well, we know this grid is 10, and then 11, so it's about here, give or take. And then we're going over 1, negative 1. So you go left, negative 1, up 3, 1, 2, 3. And then we're at 0, 0. Okay, and then we go over positive 1. So positive 1, up 3, 1, 2, 3. And then we're positive 2, 1, 2, and up 12. And again, it's approximately here. So you see, okay, yep, not the nicest little u, but it is a u. Okay, it is a u. And it's a positive quadratic function. And it looks like a u because of the 3 is a positive 3. Okay, let's try another one. Let's try another one. Again, start with negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2. We do that because it'll show us the u on both sides. All right, so we have y equals negative 2 squared minus 3. So it's negative 2 times negative 2. That gives us 4 minus 3 gives us 1. Okay, y equals negative 1 squared minus 3. And that gives us negative 1 times negative 1. That gives us 1. Minus 3 is negative 2. And then we have y equals 0 squared minus 3. Well, that's just negative 3. And then we have y equals 1 squared minus 3. So it's 1 times 1, which is 1, minus 3, which is negative 2. Whoops, negative 2. And then y equals 2 squared minus 3. So it's 2 times 2. 4 minus 3 is 1. Okay, we're going to graph. I'm going a little faster so that way this video is not so long. Okay, so we have negative 2 first. We go first left to 2, left, 1, 2, and up 1. Okay, and then we go negative 1, so left 1, and then down 2, 1, 2. Okay, and then we're at 0 and negative 3. And then we're at 1 and negative 2. Excellent. And then we're at 2 and negative and positive 1. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Here we go. And you can see, okay, here's our u. Again, not the neatest little u, but it is a positive. This was positive, so it should have been in a u shape. Okay, it is positive, so it is in a u shape. And we plug in our numbers and graph. Okay, last one, I promise, and then you have the problem for next class. All right, last one. Here we go again. Negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2. Okay, now let's plug them in. Oh, pay attention. This is a negative, so it should be looking like an N, or facing, the opening should be facing down. So y equals negative 2 times squared plus 2. This is where you have to be careful. Negative, and then in the parentheses, negative 2 times negative 2, which is positive 4. Then you bring that negative over, and then you'll add 2 to it. So negative 4 plus 2 gives you negative 2. Okay? So now the next one, y equals negative 1, whoops, there you go, squared plus 2. So that negative is on the outside because it's a negative quadratic function. It's negative 1 times negative 1 equals, what's negative 1 times negative 1? Positive 1. And then bring the negative over. And you add 2, so negative 1 plus 2 is positive 1. There we go. And then y equals negative 0 squared plus 2. Well, 0 squared is 0, and you can't have a negative 0, so it's just plus 2. And y equals negative 1 squared plus 2. Okay, so it's negative 1 times 1, which is 1. And you bring over the negative, so it's negative 1 plus 2 gives us positive 1. And then, last but not least, y equals negative 2 squared plus 2. So negative 2 times 2 is 4. Bring over that negative. So then you add 2. Negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2. And there's that pattern again. So negative 2, 1, positive 2, positive 1, negative 2. You can see the pattern in the y. So it tells you we did something right. And now we'll graph it. So, right, negative 2. And then we go down 2. And then we're at negative 1, going left, negative 1. And then up 1. And then we're at 0 and positive 2. And then we're at positive 1, first quadrant. And then we're at positive 2, negative 2. So here you go. Just like we said, it is an N, or an upside down U. And everything looks right. So that's our quadratic functions. You're going to want to pause and make sure you get all those graphs. You're going to want to have good notes because you will benefit from having these notes for next class. Yes, this was a longer video. Muscle through. You're going to be great. Here's your problem for next class. Okay. Now we're doing a decimal. I'm going to walk you through how you can multiply by a half. Putting in a fraction makes it a lot easier. Okay. Tackle this before you come to class. You can do this. I know you can. Tackle this before you come to class. And I will see you next class. Make sure you take good notes. So this is your problem for the next video. Take good notes. Okay, see you next class.